Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Today, let's definitely say g'day, and let's definitely go down under and talk to Elise Lonsdale. You know, Elise, I found you were recommended to me. I think you actually sent me a friend request, to which I responded to. And the more I learned about the important work you do down under, helping blind people to get educated about IT and all the great stuff you do on your company's YouTube channel and things, the more I knew I have to interview Elise Lonsdale and ask you the question I ask everybody. Who's Elise Lonsdale? Tell me everything you want me to know. Don't tell me you don't want me. Don't tell me things you don't want me to repeat. Go for it. I'll sit back and listen. Go.
Yes, good morning, everybody from Melbourne. It's actually Saturday morning here as we record this. I'm not sure when it goes to air, how long it takes for you to edit and put it together. But yes, it is a Saturday morning, and this afternoon I have a Toastmasters meeting at my beloved Wandon Toastmasters Club. I'm an access technologist. What I do is I do what I do. I do what I love, and I love what I do. And that is a blindness-specific access technologist. I'm independent, which means I'm not, tied to an organisation, although I have worked for the orgs, as we call it down under here, that being Blind Foundation in New Zealand, Vision Australia here in Melbourne, they've got offices in Melbourne, Sydney, in Brisbane, and for a while I worked in Perth, actually, which is right over the other side of the country. That's like going from, say, New York to Los Angeles, if you want to look at it from the American point of view. So it's a couple of hours flight away. Australia is a large, sparsely populated continent, actually. It's a continent in its own right. Melbourne sits actually on the southeastern corner of the continent, separated from the island state of Tasmania by Bass Strait. Melbourne has sort of been around since the 1850s, so there you go. Actually, a little earlier than that. And basically, it's Australia's second largest city in urban sprawl and population. And basically, I came back to Melbourne after living in New Zealand. I was quite homesick, and I thought it was time to come home, which I did. When I came home, the NDIS was started, and I'll get to the National Disability Insurance Scheme in a minute. Look, I originally worked in factories and things years ago, because when you left school at my age, you just were meant to go out and get a job. You weren't meant to really go and do tertiary studies, especially blind people. You didn't do that. So I just went and got some very sort of menial type jobs, and when I was retrenched from one of them in the early 1990s, actually, I said, this could be the best day of my life. I'll go and retrain and do something like get on computers. I had an interest in them, so I thought, well, we'll do something a little bit more professional. I started in help desk for a while. I didn't particularly like it. I know what it's like when somebody tries to stereotype you or typecast you. I wanted to do something else, so I ran my own business as a web developer for a while. During that time, I went through a gender change, so I was born male but now female. So those who can't see the images, yes, I haven't got any makeup on today. I wasn't sure whether this was a video or a auditory podcast. So I went through that transition many years ago. I don't discuss it terribly much because there's other things in my life that I think are more pertinent to what I do these days. I was a web developer, as I said. We worked on the Mount Waverley Village Shopping Centre website for a while, where I met a friend of mine, Callie, who I'm still very friendly with, very close to Callie. That was about 21 or so years ago. She's been a very good business coach in latter years, actually, and I'll return to Callie when we get to the DATA Australasia story. I was encouraged to join Toastmasters, let's say, about the mid-2000s, which is a public speaking and leadership group. It started in California 121 years ago now by Dr. Rolf Smedley, who wanted to set up an organisation that people could learn to do public speaking and build their confidence for people, primarily at that point in business. And many years ago, Toastmasters was a male-only domain. It isn't now, of course. it's open to everyone. There are clubs that do have some prereqs, like the Advanced Club I was making a video on this morning, which I'll publish later on. You need to have reached a slightly higher level to get into that, but most clubs are open to the community. There are corporate clubs that are open to people who work in a specific organisation that might run a corporate club, so that they can learn to do public speaking for presentations, and some of the things that they talk about in those sort of clubs are more subjected to non-disclosure agreements. So, you know, that's why they have the corporate clubs. Some corporate clubs are mixed, are open to the public, others aren't. I was also a member of the second online club to charter in the world, that being Firebirds Collective. We just got pipped by netizens, and that was way before COVID, and we were renegades. We were all the evil people who wanted to do Toastmasters online. However, it seemed to be the in thing once COVID came along, of course, and people couldn't go out as easy. Back to my career. I got this wonderful job in Perth in 2012, so I decided to move across the country. A friend of mine, Greg Kearney, who now is back working in the States, he originated from, when I first knew him, he was actually up in Wyoming. But him and his wife came to Australia to work as Greg was the manager of accessible technology, accessible media, I think it was, in Perth at what's now called Visibility. And they headhunted me to work in the library because I had certain skills. I knew how to make Daisy books, the digital accessible information system books that a lot of blindness libraries use, together with also with EPUB. And because a lot of that ties in with web development and coding, which I was doing, and I needed a change, so I did it. And that was the best thing for my confidence, to be perfectly blunt. And I got to meet some wonderful people in Perth. I've since been back to Perth a couple of times, and every time I go back there, I go, why the heck did I leave? Very different place than Melbourne, and certainly much better weather. But I knew I wanted to do access tech. So this position came up in New Zealand, and I've got a friend, Kylie, who is sort of, I guess you could almost say she's the voice of DATA Australasia, because she does the voiceover announcements, and, well, she's actually now a voice in the 11 Labs ecosystem, so I can type what I want into a text file and get her to read it, if that makes sense. 11 Labs is great, you know, it's got some very, very human-sounding AI-generated voices, for those who don't know what 11 Labs is. Anyway, back to this. So I went over and lived in New Zealand for 3.5 years and worked full-time at the Blind Foundation, going around the lower North Island, actually, delivering access tech services to people who are blind and have low vision. And many of these organisations' demographic are actually the retirees. In Australia and New Zealand, the largest cause of age-related blindness is actually age-related macular degeneration, where the macula in the eye, which is responsible for the high-definition colour vision that people have, degenerates, and people end up, you know, they won't go totally blind. They will have a massive blind spot. It will mess their high-definition colour vision up, and they often have to start using what we call eccentric viewing to look around the blind spot. So yeah, they have a difficult time, adjusting to blindness, and as do the people with retinitis pigmentosa, another major cause of blindness as life progresses. There I learned something very important. I'm congenitally blind. I've got congenital glaucoma and was born with a cataract in the right eye. I had sight in the left eye when I was younger, but that was ruined by glaucoma when I was about aged 4. In the meantime, I had the eye needled. They didn't do ocular lens implants like they do now, so they just drilled a hole through the cataract, destroyed the interocular lens that was in my eye, obviously, because that's really where the cataract forms. So I've got a displaced right pupil. A lot of people think that's my bad eye, but in actual fact that's actually my good eye, because I since have lost my left eye due to an expulsive hemorrhage during a corneal graft operation when I was about 18. So I've only got less than 10% vision corrected with my right eye. I used to wear the thick jam jar glasses. I didn't like them. In the early 1990s I went, nah, we can, along with leaving the factory and stuff, we could ditch those too. I went to contact lenses, and the basically the medical professional said, you can't wear a contact lens because you've got a displaced pupil. I said, really? The orthoptist in the other room just gave me a trial and it worked. So I was on soft lenses for a little while and then went to hard contact lenses, and there I've been for the last 30 years. So we broke the rules, and that's always me out there breaking rules. I'm a rule breaker, tend to march to the beat of my own drum a bit. And I think sometimes you've got to in life. I really do. So that led into, where are we now, New Zealand. I was homesick. I started negotiating with a manager at the time, at one of Vision Australia offices back here in Melbourne. It was a toss-up to come to Melbourne or Queensland, actually. Queensland's got much better weather, but my family at the time were here. And my sister's now since moved to Queensland, ironically, but right up the other end of the state. It's a very big state, Queensland. Anyhow, so I ended up back in Melbourne and negotiating with Paul, who's since left VA and gone on to other pastures. But yeah, I had a 1-year fixed-term contract here, and the paperwork got to me. Really, I'm a pragmatist. I'm not into this big paperwork. If you want paperwork done, you pay someone to do it. In my opinion, you pay the people who that's why I have accountants and bookkeepers for my business. I'm not good at that stuff, so I'd rather pay somebody who is, and I'd rather pay somebody who wants to do that work. It makes sense. It's one of the things I was taught in my business course, 24 years ago. If you can't or don't want to do something, employ someone. It's very simple. Anyhow, so I had that job very similar to what I had at Blind Foundation, running around doing access tech. And we'll talk more about access tech when I get to the DATA Australasia bit. It was ordained that I think my job was on the line with that organisation, and people said to me, why don't you go out on your own? And I said, yeah, I could. Back then, a national disability insurance system set up, which was coming in and being rolled out while I was in New Zealand, was actually really good. It isn't now, sadly. That's another bone of contention among the various disability communities around Australia. It was set up so that people could not necessarily go to large organisations to receive service. You got what we call individualised funding. So you got a package from the disability insurance scheme, and in that package you could have, well, for blind people, cane training, access tech training, occupational therapy, orthoptics for people who could see, things like even support workers who can take you shopping, help you clean your house. And what I find very useful and was absolutely amazed at when I went on the scheme, I didn't know about this until I got interviewed, you can use your support worker to do things like go through your wardrobe and help you find stains on clothing, or sort your clothes out, that sort of stuff, because I'm very particular in the way I look. And I think if you're going to be, out in the public eye and working, you've got to pretty much dress for success and look decent. And I've always held the view that if you've got a disability, you really need to dress up a notch higher than maybe your non-disabled counterparts. It puts you in good stead. So, where are we now? DATA Australasia came into being. It's interesting because on the Australia Day weekend in 2019, I knew that my job was going to end. They weren't going to renew the contract, sadly. We were talking one weekend, my friend Kelly, whom I mentioned before, and her husband Dave, and we came up with the name Disability and Assistive Technology Access Australasia, because I wanted to work on both sides of what we call the ditch. That's the Tasman Sea that divides the Australian continent with New Zealand, and still having a lot of contacts in New Zealand, and having still not long left there. I thought, well, we should include them. Of course, it's a bit of a tongue twister, isn't it? Disability and Assistive Technology Access. Disability and Assistive Technology Access. What about data? Or data, as the Americans might say, D-A-T-A. And that's why when you see it written, you see data written in capital letters. It's an acronym. So you often see data or Data Australasia, and that's why it's written the way it is. The NDIS back then was great for me. I wanted to give back. I didn't just want to come back to Australia and go, wacko, we've got this really neat new scheme with individualised funding. I can sit there and take what I want. No, that's not me. I want to have a system where I can give back. And we had a Conservative government at the time. The NDIS was put in place originally by the Labor Party before they left office in 2013. They're a socialist, the left, some people might say centre-left these days, probably a bit further than centre-left. Anyway, they came up with NDIS, and now that they're back in office, sadly they've ruined it, but we'll come to that again. Back then, the NDIS, the Conservatives here in Australia tend to leave things, the market plays its own self out, and it was a great marketplace for people to start businesses. Whether you were a support worker who went round and help people do their shopping or clean their house, tidy their room, teach them how to cook if you were an occupational therapist, or even if you were just good at cooking. Taking people out, community, civic participation and community engagement, I think, is the drop-down combo box in the portal, something like that. So I used it to go and explore my interest of photography because, I used to go out late at night on my own. I don't think that's a wise thing to do. I like photographing twilight, and I like photographing reflections of city lights in the water, in the Yarra River, or when in Sydney, in the Sydney Harbour, and Brisbane in the Brisbane River, and various places. I love lights. There's a very good speech of mine called A Colourful Journey on my YouTube channel about my auntie. My first time I met this really neat auntie, and we showed her coloured lights. And back in those days, I was reflecting sunlight off of pots and pans lids and reflecting them on the sunlight on the ceiling in the living room. I was, I think, 4 years old at the time when Mum bought this new auntie home. Everyone when you're young, in my who comes to your house is an auntie or an uncle until you're old enough not to call them auntie or uncle. But Neri's still in my life. 55 odd years later, and we still refer her to her as the auntie who isn't and the uncle who isn't, but they just like a real auntie and uncle. So I started my business because we could charge a very good rate, and we could even charge travel, although Mark and I, a gentleman in Queensland, Mark Muscat, started his business at much the same time after leaving VA, and we agreed not to really charge travel. We wanted to make our businesses different. Now, this is where we see large organisations, I guess, almost facing an identity crisis because they're never quite sure whether they're a charity or a business, because that's what these organisations did. They tried to, they were both. They're still doing donations and philanthropic type things. But they wanted to behave like a business, so which means if you didn't have money in your package, then tough luck, buddy, you're on your own. There is still a little bit of grant funding around for people, but it's very, very hush-hush, secret squirrel sort of stuff, You don't tell anyone we'll give you grant funding. There's not much around, so be quiet about it, You're meant to be on the NDIS. But there are people who, for whatever reason, aren't on the NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Anyway, so we all started businesses, those who left the bigger orgs. The mobility instructors, the orientation and O&Ms did the same thing. I'm still trying to find a really good occupational therapist. There's a couple of orthoptists out there. Mark and I and Adam built a network called Blindness and Beyond, which is a referral network and has linked many, many people with independent providers, many vision impaired and blind folk with the independent provider movement. The independent provider movement, which is us, can often provide service a lot quicker than the large organisations. We have fewer overheads and far less bureaucracy. So Access Tech. I guess you'll want to draw me out on some of these things, but Access Tech is important. It's a pathway to literacy, and that's really there's no other way of looking at it. Vision impaired people, blind people, have as much right to the written word as sighted people do. It's an immutable and human right type fact. It's as simple as that. To get access to the written word, it means you've got to communicate. And to communicate, you've got to use, in our cases, devices. Devices that talk. Devices that have large print. Or large text on the screen. Or devices that have refreshable braille. And I love teaching this sort of stuff. I think in many ways, due to the way the managers have behaved in the larger organisations over the years, we've lost the ability to teach by curriculum. I think JAWS is something that needs to have a decent curriculum, and Freedom Scientific have been very, very good over the years with their help and their online training. And we need to get back to teaching that here, because one of the things about the NDIS is that it led all the organisations down a path of this thing called client-centred. I don't like that term. I think it's stupid. We're client-centred. Yes, that's basically code for saying we'll tell you, we'll look after you, but when it comes to the crunch, we most likely won't. Client-centred is just one of those things that it's one of those virtue signalling type things where they tend to say all this stuff. They talk the talk, but they don't tend to walk the walk. It's what the client wants. The client might want to learn how to do Facebook, for example, on their mobile phone. But if they've got no concept on how to use voiceover and gesture with their access technology, or even what a hyperlink is, they're sure as hell not going to be doing Facebook. If a person can't gesture on their flat screen device, on one of these things, the iPhone, or if they haven't got keyboarding skills, they're going to have a very difficult time when it comes to driving a screen reader. So we can't jump ahead and teach those things right away. Sometimes we've got to spend a lot of time teaching the laborious stuff. I run a very, very successful keyboarding training component to my business for that reason. And I think the orgs have lost their way when it comes to that, because they're all too busy being client-centred, quote unquote. Just to finish up, the final thing, that same year, I was very fortunate. I was running to be and was successful in being the Vice President of the Apple User Society of Melbourne, one of the largest computer companies in the world, or computer user groups in the world, not companies. Apple's one of the largest companies in the world. We're just the users. One of the original oldest, that's what I'm trying to say, one of the oldest computer user groups in the world, and it was quite large for a while. And membership's dropped off a little bit, but it is slowly coming back after COVID and whatnot. So I ended up getting the vice presidency, but at the same time, my business coach, Kelly, was getting me to do all sorts of presentations with my toastmaster skills, and the fact that I like to present. I think you can probably tell that, because I've now probably waffled on here for nearly half an hour without being interrupted. So I will go quiet in a minute and have you draw me out on some stuff. Suffice it to say, so I was doing these presentations and there was a lovely lady there called Marion, and she actually asked a question about Braille, of all things, and I remember that very succinctly, and I said, look, Braille's outside the scope of this particular 1 hour presentation, because we're aiming it at retirees, people with low vision, and a lot of people are fascinated by the fact that every Apple device has access tech built into it. Anyhow, she worked, or still does, and I work with her very closely now, in the support skills program at an organisation called the Statewide Vision Resource Centre. Now, the Statewide Vision Resource Centre is just that. It's a resource centre. It does a lot of Braille and large print transcription. It used to do a lot of audio books. When Vision Australia closed the blind school down here in Melbourne that ran the support skills program, there was nowhere for it to go. So SVRC picked it up, and that was in, I believe, 2009. So 10 years later, I joined the program as a temp, because Marion had filled in the inquiry form on my website, and I saw the email and I thought, is this a spammer? They've ticked every box. JAWS training, Zoom text training, NVDA training, Apple voiceover training, etc. Anyway, it, of course, on my form has an area where you can write freehand what, who you are and whatnot. So she said who she was, and that we need somebody to fill a vacancy on a temporary basis at the support skills program, and would you like to come and have a chat, and you could work with us next Friday. That was nearly 6.5 years ago now. So there you go. The year before COVID, and in Australia, if you're a temp and you're working there longer than 2 years, they have to give you offer you a permanent position, which they did. And the reason I talk about Statewide Vision Resource Centre is it's a wonderful time to work with itinerant teachers, the teachers that go out into the school to help kids the schools to help kids who are blind and have low vision, the parents, teachers, and other professionals such as myself. And it really dovetails off with DATA Australasia. So they both started pretty much within months of each other. What I learn in DATA Australasia, I can take to statewide. What I learn in statewide, I can take back home to my own business. So there's a very good symbiotic relationship between the two roles. And I just love them both. I just think they're both awesome roles. So that's me, pretty much, in a nutshell, if you could call it that.
Well, absolutely. I would certainly call it that. Not only could I call it that, I will call it that. That's you, Elise Lonsdale, in a nutshell. There are certainly a lot of different elements that I certainly want to, extrapolate and pull out and expand on. One of the most important experiences you've had, Toastmasters, right? That's really important. Yes. That's actually basically the most important experience of your life thus far has been for you to have that experience, right? Because really, if you can't be a public speaker, you can't run a business, you can't do anything else. And as you can tell, I love using my voice. I love being a public speaker. Literally nothing makes me happier than talking into a microphone. But a lot of people are phobic about public speaking. So really, when it really comes down to Toastmasters, right, really walk us through. So what exactly do you do in a Toastmasters meeting? What is it exactly? And really make the full connection. How has becoming a great public speaker, to which you definitely are, right? How has being a great public speaker really helped you in understanding society? Because I think that's really the most important thing. Toastmasters has really been able to help you bridge the gap between you and society. So really walk us through that. Absolutely.
Thanks for that, Aaron. There was a very pertinent moment about a year after I started Toastmasters back in 2005, where a friend of mine who was highly critical, with whom I was living at the time, that's since stopped, even noted herself, she's digging high praise off this person was pretty much impossible. She said, "You have so much benefit," because I took a group of school teachers who wanted a website at the time. And I led the meeting and I said, this is what we can do for you. This is our product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it just flowed, because one of the things that Toastmasters can do is it can actually help you frame your thoughts. So what happens in a normal meeting, a regular meeting now of districts, that's the district in West Australia, District 73 here in Melbourne, which is Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania, and District at the time 72 in New Zealand. So each club runs themselves a bit differently, but we now have a learning program called Pathways, which up until recently has not been accessible to blind and low vision people. It is now, although I was on it yesterday struggling to find something, and that's another story. Kirsten and I were looking through some of the new additions that I've got to do prior to getting a level 5 in a particular pathway that I'm working on. What happens in a meeting is, it's a typical meeting, and there's almost no such thing, because whilst they all use the same learning program that's built by Toastmasters International, clubs have a lot of autonomy. Now, there are several clubs. There are usually about 4 clubs to an area. So many clubs to a division. I used to know this, I've forgotten now. And so many divisions to a district. Then you've got a region, and then you've got Toastmasters International. And I know people from Region 12, which is our New Zealand, Australia and Southeast Asia, New Guinea part of the world, Monique. I've mixed with Toastmasters at all levels. District directors, people in the trio, which is the 3 people who run the district, etc., all over the place. I've had a pretty so a typical meeting. You go to a club. Once you've joined, you can participate in everything. Although we have a culture here of asking guests to participate as a table topic. So you'll have a meeting. Some clubs have their business session, which is passing motions. It used to be very, very big on Ranton's rules or there's Renton's rules and Robert's rules of order. So you would pass the motion, you know, all those in favour say aye, I think the motion's carried, that sort of stuff. I've seen that drop off a bit over the years. We still see it at district level quite a bit, which I think is good, and I think it should be really reinforced in the clubs. There's certain ways of moving a motion. The chairman doesn't move a motion. I've seen chairmen do that, but you shouldn't. You ask for somebody to move a motion. You ask for somebody to second that motion, and all those in favour say aye. They say aye or nay. I think the ayes have it. Bang. Hit the gavel. So you might do a business session, although a lot of clubs here in District 73 have opted to put the business session just before the break for the benefit of newer people and guests who probably don't want to see all the politicking of the club as soon as the meeting commences. Then you usually have a round robin, where everybody gets to speak for about 15 to 20 seconds, depending on how much time there is, on whatever the topic is. And the toastmaster of the day, or in some districts, I think even in one of the New South Wales districts that Kirsten's involved with, I think they call it a chairman. In New Zealand they did. In my opinion, a chairman is a presiding officer, not so much the person who's running the meeting. The person who's running the meeting is the toastmaster of the day, who serves as a congenial host for the meeting and introduces speakers and presenters. So you have the round robin, usually done either by a round robin master or the toastmaster of the day, depending on how the club wants to structure their meetings. Then you move into table topics. Now, the whole idea of table topics is it's the idea, usually 6 people, although our club out here in Wandon's only doing 4. I believe in 6. I think Parramatta in Sydney are doing about 10 because they've got so many people in it. Usually it's about 6 people who get asked different questions, obviously, because they're in the same room and they don't want to copy each other. And you've got to stand up for 1 minute to 2 minutes and give a speech on that subject. The other day I got a table topic when I was at the Toast of the Country Club, which is the advanced club I may have mentioned earlier, and it was something like, how do you see technology in 20 years' time? Or what do you see the future is in technology 20 years' time? Well, of course, I was actually thinking about my speech, and generally don't give table topics to people who have got other roles, but in this instance it can happen. And oh my God. Well, all right. So I got up, and in most clubs you go to the lectern, but it used to be given from the table that you spoke at, hence the name table topics. So the table that you sat at. But I'd said, well, being blind and have low vision, what about autonomous vehicles? I know they're trialling them in America, but I see that's where things are going. I mean, to say I've got, AI now, which, we all remember the robot on Lost in Space, Danger, Will Robinson, that silly thing. Now we've got intelligent beings, intelligent devices, like the robot from, say, The Day the Earth Stood Still, or Data in Star Trek or something like that. So we've got that in the palm of our hand now, and I need to get it now. Now the next notch for me would be an autonomous vehicle, so I can decide when I'm going to come to a meeting and when I'm going to leave it, or when I'm going to go to a friend's house and when I'm going to return home without having to worry about getting a taxi or an Uber or relying on the goodwill of friends. So you speak about that, and then you move into the speeches. Now, often that's when the meeting might have a break at the end of table topics. In actual fact, they're evaluated. Everything in Toastmasters is evaluated. So you'll have usually 2 evaluators, one evaluating the odd-numbered respondents and one evaluating the even-numbered respondents. And yes, there are plenty of jokes around about the odd table topic respondents. In other words, you're dealing with the odd people. No, not quite. There's people who might be happen to have got table topic 1, 3, 5, or even 7. So anyway, they are evaluated, and evaluations usually for table topics are quite quick. And I'll talk more about speech evaluations when I get to that. Then the speeches, usually 1 or 2 before the break, or mainly these days they're after the break. They're speeches that generally go from 5 to 7 minutes, although in the advanced speeches that I've had to do, some are even up to 20 minutes. It does vary, and then when that happens, you've got to speak to the VPE, who usually does the scheduling, to have that extra time in a meeting. And sometimes it might mean your slot might take up 2 slots, which means somebody else could miss out. So the speeches are done, usually these days about 3 or 4 speeches. I remember back in the day running Glen Waverley Toastmasters, we would do 6 speeches a night. Anyhow, the speeches are done and then they're evaluated. I love evaluations. The speeches can be on any topic. We usually do not talk about sex, politics or religion, but other than that, anything's open slather. But the speeches have to meet objectives. So you're speaking from that Pathways learning program, or various levels they're in the Pathways learning program. When you're doing a speech, it might be body language, it might be, writing a speech with purpose. It could be, you could even have a panel discussion and have, a couple of other people with you. There is a storytelling exercise, speaking with story. That's, I think, in level 3, if I remember rightly, when I did it. Anyhow, you then go to have the speech evaluations. Usually a good evaluation is you start with a praise, improvement, praise, the sandwich method, or in New Zealand they called it commendation, recommendation, commendation, because people always remember the first thing that's said and the last thing that's said. And you really try to set the speaker up to come back and do better next time, or keep going. You don't want to discourage the speaker when you evaluate them. Well, the second commendation or praise isn't quite the last thing you now should say in an evaluation. It was back in the day, but these days they expect you to do a summation or a summary at the end of the evaluation. And a good evaluation, particularly when you're competing in a contest, and there are speech contests and evaluation contests that run, to get a good score, if you give a very good summation at the end, it just rounds off the evaluation quite well. Then there's a harkmaster, which is a person who listens for various things and asks questions at the end after the evaluations. A R counter, we used to call it a grunt master. They're the people who count the ums, ahs and filler words. Some clubs have other smaller, what they call watchdog roles. Everything's timed. There's a timer. There's an official timer. And we do it by green, orange and red lights for people who are vision impaired. And I was speaking with this about Kirsten yesterday. I was telling her how we set buzzers up for people who can't see, particularly when they're in a contest. 1 beat for going from when the green light comes on, 2 for when the orange light comes on, and 3 for when the red light comes on. After the red light comes on, you've got 30 seconds to get off. And particularly so in contests. So, in meetings, look, my speech on Thursday night went overtime. It was a complex speech that I only got about something like 11 hours notice to produce, and it was a reflective speech on this year. So with a bit of rehearsal time, which I didn't get that day, I probably would have been able to cut more out of it. I cut quite a lot out of the written version of that speech. It will go up on my YouTube channel in the next few days. Anyway, and then we have a general evaluator. I think I've left somebody out. Harkmaster, R counter. Grammarian. There's usually a grammarian who stands up really at the beginning of the meeting and gives the word of the day. And that grammarian will come back during the evaluation section and say whether that word of the day was used. It's usually to do with the theme of the meeting in many cases, and if anyone's used any interesting uses of the English language. I think I had one recently. Yes, I was talking about Canadians coming from Canada. So, interesting twists to the English language they might pick up on, or even incorrect uses of the English language. Then you have the general evaluator that evaluates all the evaluators, so to speak, I guess, and the meeting as a whole. Did the meeting open on time? Did the Sergeant-at-Arms call it to order and hand on to the President? It used to be quite a lot there about handing over control of the meeting. The Sergeant-at-Arms would, say where the toilets were, where the exits are, welcome everybody to the meeting and give the meeting number, and then hand over to the President or the toastmaster of the day. And they would run the meeting. And then every time somebody takes control, you shake hands. I've got to remember to tell Kirsten that. She may not have noticed that. She probably has, but when vision impaired people come to Toastmasters, it's always good to check that they know the subtleties. And you shake hands when you take control of the meeting, and you shake hands with the person to whom you hold control back to. And the Americans do it too. Then you have basically, after the general evaluation, usually the toastmaster takes control and hands back to the president, or something similar. The clubs can vary, and then the meeting closes. So that's a meeting.
Super cool. Super, super fun. I think with you doing that, that sounds like a blast. It really does. It sounds like you
it's great fun.
It sounds like you learn a lot. It's really serious, but it also sounds like it could be so entertaining and so endearing. Absolutely.
It's like a family, it is. It's so fun, I got carried away a bit yesterday. I hope I didn't overwhelm my friend on the phone, when I was talking to Kirsten, because she's new to it, and I've got 20 years of history, and I'm going on about, people on the committee. Yeah, I've got 20 years of history with it, and of course I'm talking about when we did this back then, and when we did this back where, and there's committee positions change every 12 months here in Australia and New Zealand. They used to change every 6 months, I think, in the States. I'm not sure whether they still do or not.
Yeah, I have
anyway,
I have no idea.
Go on.
Yeah. No, I have no idea. You know what? I'm really gonna. You knew that you weren't getting out of here without making me sweat. And as a podcaster and public speaker myself, the greatest thing that I can do is show you how vulnerable I can be. So really put me on the spot. Throw a topic at me and make me talk about it for a minute. If you can come up with one Toastmaster topic right now to get Aaron's opinion, to give his opinion about it for 1 minute and 1 minute only, what's the topic? And then let me answer it. Go. Really throw me a curveball, man.
Okay, so when we ask a table topic, let's do it with the table topics. We ask the question first, so the whole meeting is listening, because some people who are inexperienced will often ask the people, ask the person and then give the question, which means we all go to sleep. So we might go to the meeting, and the next question, or the third question, is, where do you see the future of podcasting going? It's been around now for several years. There are people of all levels doing podcasting, but what's the future in podcasting? And why do you believe what you're about to say might be true?
So,
Aaron.
Thank you. The future of podcasting in 1 minute, according to Aaron's opinion, and why I believe it's true. The future of podcasting is podcasting will help people like you come up to my microphone and get the opportunity to speak about the most important topics in their life. Podcasting is important because it gives people a voice when they might not have already had a voice, and certainly podcasting helps people to have the confidence to speak up and speak about the most important topics in their life. And I believe this is all true, in my humblest opinion, because I've noticed that people on Facebook have just been sending me friend requests like you. And each time I've accepted that request and showed people what I can do with them in the podcast space, I notice a great source of reciprocation and appreciation from you. That's the future of podcasting, according to Aaron's opinion.
Thank you, Aaron. And our next question is, and we just go on from there. So very well done. And you usually have a round of applause when somebody finishes speaking. They will have come up to the lectern to deliver that 1 to 2 minute table topic. In most clubs, we used to, Glen Waverley still do it at the table, but I think pretty much all the clubs I've been in for the last 10 or so years of getting you to come up to the lectern, which can often be good because it gives you thinking time. There are a lot of people who stall it a bit by saying, "Oh, what a very good question, Madam Toastmaster, Table Topics Master, etc."
Or they'll drink their water or something like that. That's what people do when they're nervous. They take a sip of a drink.
They take a sip of water, which is harder to bring up to the lectern if you're at the table, but if you've got it on your table, you could have a sip of water.
Well,
there are people who've got many different...
tell everybody, there's only one solution to that problem. Just tell everybody no water's allowed at the meeting. Then nobody will have the water to drink, and, that problem will be solved.
The problem will be solved, It doesn't take long to get over the nerves. Like, we've got some lovely people in the Wandon Club who joined after me, and I remember one person in particular, she was so scared of giving a table topic.
Oh, God.
She's now Vice President of Education, and that's the second highest ranking officer in the club. She took on a meeting the other day because the president was absent, and it was like as if she had been doing it forever. She was so competent. It was a credit to her to see her take that role and do it so well. And whenever she's given evaluations recently or done her own speeches, this lady has just blossomed in the last 18 months to 2 years. It's been 18 months, I think, she's been with us. So it doesn't take long to get over those fears.
Yeah, that's so good. So it sounds to me the overarching storyline here, to keep it going, to keep the beautiful story flowing here, is that basically Toastmasters has helped you to accept criticism and to really approach people with a conversational mindset. You know, you're able to solve problem through conversation, and that's really, really important, you know. So
criticism is something that criticism, you know, some people use that term, constructive criticism. I think that's an oxymoron. I don't like it. But accept advice is probably the way I would put it, or accept evaluations. In actual fact, I did a Vox Pop the other night that I'm about to publish. And one of the ladies, the last one in the chain of people who got to say, what was the best thing that you got out of Toastmasters in the last several years? And you've got to answer the question in one sentence. That was the challenge. And one lady, Sue, said to me, to put your big girl pants on and accept constructive advice from people who are well-meaning. So, yes, getting those evaluations really does teach you to listen and teach you to take things on board. Absolutely,
and that's really helpful for you in the business world. Yeah, really, really, really fascinating.
Absolutely.
Sure. So do most people join these Toastmaster clubs because they're terrified of being a public speaker and they know that they need to improve it, or do some people join just because they love public speaking, or is it all a mixed bag in each of the clubs?
I think it's a mixed bag. I've seen people join for, I need to give a speech at my daughter's wedding in 6 months' time, and then they stay. Or I'm as nervous as all get out, so they try and beat the nerves. There's people who join because they just want an interest and they've had an inkling to do public speaking. There's my friend in Sydney, for example, her mother is very keen for her to join it because she's I'm not really sure why, but you know, I guess each reason's personal. But I can see what it will do for my friend Kirsten. It'll be wonderful to see once she's fully joined the transformation that will happen. And it will be good. So people join because their families recommend it, or people join because they've got a business, or people join because, well, in actual fact, getting back to that lady Vicky I was living with 20 years ago, she wanted me to join just to get out of the house so she could have the house to herself.
There
that's
you go.
The problem.
Gets you out of the house.
The only problem was...
Well, that's something to do, getting out of that. That's important to be active. So
well, it was.
An ironic way.
Yeah, but it wasn't for my benefit, it was for
course.
hers.
No, I got it.
Yeah, well, it got worse for her because the problem was I got good at it and she got jealous. She didn't expect me to do so well. There's various awards. I'm on the old system, a Toastmaster Silver, and I am. The system changed to the pathways thing before I was able to get my DTM. The DTM, or the Distinguished Toastmaster Award, is the highest award Toastmasters can bestow upon a person. And I know people out there with several DTMs, believe it or not. So they can just go around and do the program again if they want.
Super cool. All right, moving over to the YouTube stuff that you do. So to clarify, when we initially came in contact with each other on the Great Messenger, you did of course send me your YouTube. Now, just so I can understand, you said the word your YouTube channel. Do you mean DATA Australasia's channel? Or is that, in essence, your channel? So you said my channel.
Yeah, it is my channel. It is my channel, but I've renamed it to Elise Lonsdale and DATA Australasia because I haven't really got round to working out how, with one Google ID, you can have two accounts, if that's even possible. I wouldn't know. I am a big believer in not having more than one account on various social media platforms, which is why I like, the fact that Facebook, for example, if you create a business page, which I've done, and I even created them for Toastmaster clubs. I was a bit of a trailblazer when social media came around.
So good.
We were one of the first ones to have social media presence. Similarly with websites back in Glen Waverley. So basically I just went, you know what, I could have another Google profile and maybe I should. because I've now worked out with Chrome, for example, you can have the web browser decide, ask you which profile you want to use when you go in. I've got access to the Wandon Toastmasters profile. We upload our videos to a private YouTube channel for anonymity. We may give the participants can give their links out to their playlists to their family members if they want. So I just renamed it from Elise Lonsdale. It began as a hobby to Elise Lonsdale in DATA Australasia. I'm sure there's probably several social media gurus out there who are probably kicking up their feet saying you shouldn't do it like that, or you should do it like that. I don't know. Sure. If anyone wants to comment, they're welcome to.
Well, how about Aaron's opinion? So here's what I think.
How about Aaron's opinion? All right.
And it's just an opinion. It's just an opinion. It's not a fact. So yeah. Up over on my side of the universe, generally what people do, in more cases than not, I'm noticing that people do have a couple different YouTube channels. So you would have your personal channel just for you, but then you would have your professional channel for what you do, right? Like, so this is Aaron's Opinion TV, right? And then I also have just my own personal channel that I can watch stuff on and things like that. It does make a huge difference. The difference is that YouTube obviously is a product of Google. And when you're watching anybody else's video, YouTube is obviously observing which profile you're using to view the video. So if you have two accounts, right, two YouTube profiles, and you really want to help the other channel, you should be watching their video with the account that has more subscribers, because they value the viewers based on the subscriber counts. But it's not the end of the world. If you only have one channel with two names, that's certainly not a big deal and not the end of the world. But YouTube, the software does notice. So yeah.
Look, it's something I might, once I get more material up there, I might do.
Right.
Because I got access to the Toastmasters District 73 channel. I was uploading videos to that we did when I was on the education committee, working with the education committee last year. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, they haven't withdrawn my access. I do the videography for Wandon Toastmasters. Clubs don't generally record. People record take their own gear in if they want, or get somebody to hold up a mobile phone. Some clubs are hybrid, which means they've got video, which means they've got the video presence to, go out on Zoom as well as live on Zoom and still have their, physical meeting. There are online clubs, purely online clubs now, of course, which I mentioned earlier. And, basically, the whole thing is that, I've got access to these other accounts, and I treasure that because it means people trust me to look after those accounts. But I wouldn't be uploading my private stuff to those accounts.
Sure.
The district or therefore the club,
that's
whatever
cool.
the case
That's
is.
great. Yeah, they gave you admin access of that handle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's good. Well, then you'll certainly get a collaboration link. And then when we set this video up, your channel, I'll send you a link. You click it, you accept the collaboration, and then when it comes out, it will show both channels, and it's a way to equally represent your audience and my audience. But all this really fascinating. So, okay, on your channel, so when you upload a video, that was one thing that wasn't perfectly clear to me initially. So, what is your content, man? What do you talk about specifically?
Okay, I'm using the playlist feature. So there are 3 playlists on my channel. A 4th one that's private for family. But the 3 main ones are the Toastmasters one, which is getting more content as I get along. I haven't been uploading as much as I should. My private one, which is Travel and Curiosity, and the one for Data Australasia. So they're the 3 main ones. And in each of those playlists, obviously, go the relevant material. I did a very good one the other day. There's a new feature in JAWS called Page Explorer. I've really got to get a better video capture card, but I was able to demonstrate that because the audio output from the Windows PC goes through the mixer that I've got here that I'm talking through to you on at the moment, and the video goes directly to one of the inputs on the Mac, and I can do real-time how-to videos, if that makes sense. And I have done a few, but they're not on the YouTube channel. Something I want to do more of. Especially when you get some fantastic new feature like that Page Explorer in JAWS 2026. they're the sort of things that go up. There's been a lot of discussion that I've picked up on the NDIS, on the DATA Australasia channel. The things like I might do a video on what I call the 4 learning disciplines of blindness, which are access tech, orientation and mobility, occupational therapy, and orthoptics. And orthoptics, for those who can see, something's, regardless of what your vision's like. If you've got no vision, then that doesn't work for you. But and I've done talks explaining how all that works. I've recently cause of the downturning of my business with the NDIS. It's nowhere near as friendly towards the participants as it once was. So therefore, people have been confused. Plus, I spent the last 12 months of my life doing in Australia, we have this certificate level type courses, which is just a notch down from a diploma. I've been doing a certificate 4 in training and assessment, so I'm now once again a qualified trainer. And that means I can get a job in the tertiary sector if I want one. And basically it also qualifies me as a trainer because I did do the course years ago, and I think the qualification may have lapsed, so I wanted to do it again. But in the time between the 2 courses, it's changed a heck of a lot and become a lot more bureaucratic, a lot more repetitive, and harder, much harder to do. Anyhow, the whole thing was that I've now got a bit of extra time on my hands, so I can have time to produce these videos.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really important to recognize when you have some free time and to get a video out and set it up, and that's really fascinating. Well, I'm definitely going to take a closer look, and so will the global audience here at Aaron's Opinion. With your description. Not only will you be added to my private groups on, WhatsApp and Facebook, which I certainly hope you join. Well, please join them, and the email list, yes. which you should, if you haven't already, accept the invitation to be on the email list, because when this information comes out, it'll be on the email list. Obviously, you should. I think I did see an invitation to something about the time you sent me the Zoom link. Yeah. Yeah. Is Groups.io? Are you a big fan of Groups.io?
I think Groups.io is great. Yeah,
I love it.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's because it really makes it easier. It makes sending out mass emails a lot easier to a group, and that's a really important thing.
It makes it very, very easy to subscribe.
Exactly. Yes, that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the world wouldn't be the same without a Groups.io, and our world wouldn't be the same without a WhatsApp. That's for sure. Those 2 platforms are just uniting, basically.
WhatsApp, Groups.io, they bring people together.
They definitely do. Without
they just bring people. Yeah, they bring.
Well, this is like super fascinating. So a few minutes ago you were asking me what I think the future of podcasting is. So, you speak beautifully. How many other podcasts have you been on, by the way?
Oh, I've been on a number. I used to love radio when I was younger.
Me too.
And I did do some work in community radio back in the day. So I got very used to with microphones. Actually, in fact, my auntie she was talking at my 60th birthday, which is on the private channel, and for family and whatnot. And she was talking about how when I was younger, I'd always like to go over when I was like 4 and 5 years old. This is Narissa, the one that I was showing the lights to. And she'll also tell you a story about me going over to her place to talk on her black and silver tape recorder. I would have been all of about 5 or 6 at the time. So I liked to pick the microphone and talk into it and hear myself back, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that as a boy. Yeah, I'm a young person. Obviously, I was born in '91, so. But I was fascinated by that type of recording technology in the 90s. I was fascinated by it, and then my whole life I was immersed in audio my entire life. So I totally get the importance of audio, and I was a huge audio person, like forever. Absolutely.
Audio's great.
Yeah, really, really good. Yeah, our society wouldn't be the same without audio content. And then I think eventually what happened, at least as far as I remember, is in the 2000s, people started the concept of podcast, creating an audio experience for people to listen to. And then once people figured out that you can subscribe to it, and each new episode develops and you have a new listen and it gets downloaded, then people started to figure it out. But in the early 2000s, it was not as common as it is now. You're very right. Everybody participates in the ecosystem, whether you're a listener or a creator. Everybody's consuming in podcasting in some degree, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's been great because it's brought listening to the realm of the sighted person as well, because you see sighted people getting into Audible, listening to podcasts.
That's a really great observation.
You'll hear them say, I was listening to a podcast on the way to work this morning,
yeah,
while they were driving. So it's great.
It absolutely is. I've interviewed sighted people, certainly I have, but I've never really asked if there's a tremendous difference in the way sighted people perceive podcast. Surely there would be and is. I just haven't asked it. I mean, I think podcasting is attractive to everyone because everybody can participate and there's basically no barrier to entry. All you need is a voice and a microphone. It's not like
you
how
can
things
make it
were in the past, where you would
you can make it as sophisticated or as simple as you want.
Or as creative, or as weird, or as musical or not. There's so many variants to it all. Yeah. I've never been to Australia, but we have a lot of listeners from Australia and New Zealand. And I've helped a lot of people get into the podcast space. I was helping some people who created a podcast just about music history, so that's a very specific, a very niche thing and things like that. Yeah. Really, really good. So, then back to your business that you run, right? So you obviously run an IT business, educating people around your community in information technology and helping them to be, able to use, assistive technology. But what are some observations? Because obviously you've been thinking a lot about society, right? And what are some observations you've been making about, Australian people, Australian society? I mean, we up over want to know what's really going on, within the framework of Australian society these days. What's happening?
I think we're going through a lot of change. This will be the time that historians will refer to as the time of the culture wars.
Right.
We see a lot of people, virtue signalling, let's do everything we can for people with disabilities. Let's help refugees. Let's, we've taken the idea from Canada for the First Nation people here or Indigenous people as they refer to it, which is the Aboriginal, community. And I think sometimes people don't, They talk the talk, but they don't really walk the walk.
Completely.
And that's where I think, it's getting a little bit off the rails. And we see that with disability. We saw it when I was doing that Cert 4 course. It was written all over it, to be honest. None of it was accessible. Headings weren't done right in pages. There was a lot of documents, and managing a document where you've got to fill in a table can be tricky with a screen reader. I was with a blind friend of mine who did sadly leave the course. It all got a bit too much for them. And even the sighted people in that course was having trouble, much less me or my friend who did eventually bail out. Anyhow, I think what I would like to see happen for us, there are some disability courses that people can do. Some are accredited, some are not. There's a Cert 3, maybe even a Cert 4 level course in disability that comes under the community services, what they call training package. But access tech's barely mentioned. It's all about taking, Mrs. Jones out to, go to the shops and what you should do if, you sense somebody's doing, elder abuse, or they're not clean or hygienically clean, or those sort of things, which is fine for people who are like being support workers, or even people who are step that up a notch and personal care attendants who might shower people and help groom them, and especially people with where there's physical and very, very severe intellectual disabilities, that sort of stuff, which is all sort of fine. But there's absolutely really nothing much under the ASCA, the Australian Skills Quality Authority people, for blindness specific access technology. And that's why we've had a reduction in what we can claim from the NDIS, because my rate dropped from, well, officially $193.95 an hour down to 104. At the time, it was $101.43. So it works out to be near enough, 45-50% cutting in what you could charge an hour almost, because it's not recognised. So what I want to see, where I see things are heading in Australia, is that the blind community needs to probably step up a campaign, and I have been talking to Blind Citizens Australia about this, where access tech should have more recognition, either by means of a course, an accredited course that people can do if they want to be an access technologist, a blindness-specific access technologist. I also want to see that basically the NDIS recognises it as well, because we're charging under this AT mentoring code, which is a load of codswallop, to be honest. It's not, a mentor is different from a trainer. A mentor will guide you through, what you've learnt in your classroom, and if you've got trouble, they won't sort of so much teach you stuff, but they'll look. A friend of mine did it to me the other night to get me through the course. She said, "Look, we're just going to get you through these last 3 questions." She mentored me. She says, "Come on, Elise, get off your backside and finish these questions, because they're the only 3 things between you and that qualification." So I did. That's mentoring. Training is completely different. So the NDIS, recognise AT mentors. Now, they say AT mentors can't write reports. I'm still writing reports because I can, and they get funded. Most of them do. I either write them, or my friend Kylie from New Zealand will come in and help me interview the client and write those reports for funding reasons. So I really think that where we see Australian society going, we have an itinerant model for teaching children as well, which I think is very, very different from what they're doing in the States. I would like to see some improvement in that, in both the itinerant teaching model and the what goes on here in the NDIS for the adults, because I think they deserve better. I think we need to have a situation where people who are, in the children's space, people can go to a school and do blindness-specific stuff for maybe 6 weeks over the summer break or something, or during the school year even, instead of just being the only kid in the school who may be vision impaired or blind. And then, it depends on what itinerant visiting teacher they've got as to what sort of service they'll get, how much the VT knows and how much they want to know. Often what I do in my role at Statewide, and even with the business, is work with and teach, and have been paid for this, run JAWS and NVDA and Apple classes for the itinerant teachers to learn stuff that really is second nature to us vision impaired people, but may not be so for sighted teachers. So I'm starting to move into the space of working with other professionals as well as my clients. So I think we do need to make some severe changes and modifications to the way we do access tech, both for young people and for adults here in this country.
I completely agree. And, the same would be true in the States. As the unemployment rate is at a all-time high, far too high, for blind people. Some would say 75%, 70% are unemployed. I would tell you, probably it's a lot higher. Probably about 90% of the blind people in the United States really don't have employment. And this is primarily because of lack of IT training is one of the factors. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the societal obstacles, obviously. But your work is really pivotal for helping all these people to really get to where they deserve to be in their lives. And I think that's really critical. Yeah, really, really, really interesting. And then then you do that, and then how many hours do you work as an instructor each day? Would you say 8 hours?
It's dropped out. It was definitely 8 to 8 hours, but you sort of divide it into client facing and admin stuff. I could do 4, 6, 2 hours a day, but because the rates were so high, it covered us for our travel, and it covered us for all the subscriptions we got to do for the business. At the moment, it's dropped right off. Now, that pup possibly could be because of the fact I've been concentrating on this training and assessment course. The paradigm at the NDIS has changed, so it's going to be harder to find people who are funded by it. Currently I'm working with somebody who's funded through Job Access, which is another government scheme which do pay different rates. That's a remote client I have in South Australia. So it can vary. At the moment I might only be getting a couple of hours a day, maybe a few days a week where there isn't. The job at Statewide, of course, is on a Friday with the support skills program, and that is definitely an 8 hour a day, or 7.6 something or other hours. You may as well say an 8 hour a day job.
I'll pronounce it 8.
So pass it off as 8, and I'm back on LinkedIn now, and I have left myself open for work. So if contract work comes my way, either remotely or in person, then I'll look at that, contract or even employment if I have to move out. I'd rather not leave the business, but if it comes to a point where the business isn't as sustainable as it once was, and if somebody offers me a full or part-time position that works, then of course I would have to consider it.
Absolutely. Yeah, certainly. Well, with all these things in mind, I think your product is incredible. You're doing incredible work. I still wonder. I'm still really happy that you sent me the friend request and all of that. And never would have known. I think you got to promote yourself a little bit further around the community, man. Because I never would have known of an Elise Lonsdale if you had never initiated the friend request there. But I'm really appreciative you have. Yeah.
Thank you. I think sometimes I see people, and it comes up with people you may know, and I might look at a profile and go, oh, they know this person, they're a blindie. Or I'll look up somebody's profile and see their friends, oh, they're a toastmaster. Okay, I'll friend them. There's something common there.
Okay, well, cool. Probably we do have mutual friends, and then probably you also, appreciate the fact that I produce audio content and also I'm a YouTuber. So I think all those factors lined up the profile. Yeah,
I would have read it at the time. Yeah, really. All I remember is last Friday about 7 o'clock in the morning, actually, Vent Messenger was pinging like anything. I was having breakfast or brushing my teeth to get ready for support skills program that day, and it would have been Thursday afternoon your time. And basically we started communicating, of course.
Really good, really, really good. So where have you traveled to outside of Australia, by the way?
I've been to the South Pacific. I've been to Fiji, Vanuatu, Namibia. I have been to the States. When I was actually, one of the things I didn't mention before, when I was a Cisco trainer, I was working with the Cisco Academy for the Vision Impaired, which was run from Perth, which is how I got the connection with the Perth people in Western Australia. I met a lovely lady called Jackie McBride, and she's out of Arizona. And we worked very, very, very closely together on a couple of courses that we were running, and I went over and saw her and her husband. It was lovely. We went to the Grand Canyon. I would certainly love to go to England and Europe. I've always wanted to go there, but at the moment, money.
I understand. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Europe, specifically France, of course. Europe is an amazing place. Yeah. Really, really, really good. Absolutely.
It sounds like it is, definitely. Yeah.
Well, can be. Depends on where you go. French is my second language, so I'm able to navigate France and have a lot of interesting experiences with people, and so that's always very interesting to me. But England is also incredible too. Very, very beautiful, and things like that. They have a lot of conversation clubs for foreigners who learn English, and I'm sure you'd fit right in with the Toastmasters in England. I'm sure they have a lot of those clubs there. Yeah.
Well, Toastmasters is in 100 and something or other countries. It definitely is in England. It was interesting because, especially when I was doing the online stuff with Toastmasters, and, there are people from India and China and Bangladesh and France and the UK and all over Europe. So Toastmasters is definitely everywhere, which is why I was able to join it when I went to New Zealand, of course.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I'm in my Lions Club, so there's Lions Clubs all over the world.
There's Lions all over the world.
Which is very good. That's also very good, because we need a lot of, in addition to continuing your work, there also needs to be more volunteerism too. I see that there's a lack of volunteerism in American society. People not wanting to get involved, get out of the house, volunteer, work hard. A lot of people a lot of people just don't do that, and I think that's a really serious thing, Yeah.
Well, we need volunteers, but the other thing is, like you said, it gets you out of the house. I was talking to some friends, and this friend of mine who has come over from New Zealand to live in Australia, she was looking for some volunteer work, and two of the other people in the group said, "What do you want to do that for? They'll just take advantage of you, blah, blah, blah. You'll be living in poverty for the next 10 years. I said, well, if they take on these volunteer roles they're trying to get, they may only be in poverty for 1 year, because volunteer can often lead to building networks. It can lead to employment. It can give you experience, and it may even indirectly lead to employment. That is, you've got the position to get a job that's not connected with the one you've got. Whatever the case is, it's better to do it than not.
You're 100% correct there. 100% correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, really good. Well, I think that about covers the whole beautiful story of all the great stuff you do. So I'm sure you do have a lot of questions for Aaron Richmond and Aaron's opinion, right? So as I always like to say, please ask all your questions. What do you really want to know about me, the podcast, my life? I mean, I really like to turn the microphone in both directions. I always like to make sure that you, the guest, can ask all your questions too. So what do you want to know about me?
Thanks, Aaron. Firstly, I wasn't aware of you until you came up on Facebook, and so I would like to know how long the podcast is going. Is it something you do in conjunction with other work? I think you might have mentioned you're a trainer yourself. Is that correct?
Sure, it is. So the podcast itself, Aaron's Opinion, has been on the market for 5 years, right? We've been around for 5 years. Only very recently has our audience become as globalized as we have become, right? So, yeah, I mean, I would say we've been around for 5 years. We've done a lot of starts and stops and a lot of different formats, but I've come to develop this style, over these past 5 years. Yeah, and it really grew out of my interest in creating content for people, because I really want to have a place where blind people and sighted people and everyone can come up to my microphone. I really have a problem with the fact that some podcasts are not open-minded, and I want to produce a podcast where the people feel welcome and where things are open-minded. I think that's really, really important, right? So that's kind of where this all came from. And then I got onto Facebook, and I was in various blindness groups, and I would answer people's questions, and I would send them an audio message, and I would answer the question they asked within the Facebook group. Facebook groups are amazing. And then just over time, it occurred to me that that's a podcast, because it's audio, and the person asking the question is an audience, and then that's a podcast. And I was already very familiar with podcasts and radio shows, so I was already very versed in the art of the theater of the mind and using audio and conversation to convey messages that help people. So that's kind of the backing of where all this comes from. I am an English as a second language teacher. I work for several different online companies around the universe, providing one-on-one English language instruction where people are overseas and they need to learn English to either get a better job or, in many cases, to leave their current country. So I've heard a lot of tremendously compelling and fascinating stories over the years, for sure.
And obviously you're low vision.
Well, I'm blind, obviously. Also with congenital...
are you totally blind?
I'm not totally blind.
Oh, okay.
So I have usable vision, but we don't say that it's an impairment. I don't say impairment. I say that it's, just blind. But that's me.
Yeah, we often just say blind. It makes the conversation easier sometimes for people who aren't in the know.
It's more accurate because you're blind. There's no impairment. There's no low. There's no vision. It's blind. If you weren't blind, you'd be sighted. There's, now people have a really hard time understanding that, I think, but yeah, that's how that goes. I'm blind because I am. Yeah.
Well, you've got what I've got, the congenital glaucoma.
Right. With many surgeries and people that have fixed my eyes. Yeah.
Pardon?
I've had many surgeries to fix my eyes and to restore, give me some vision. Yeah.
Yeah, some vision. Yeah.
You were saying people didn't want. I didn't catch that.
People in the day didn't believe glaucoma could exist in people so young. It does, because especially it's a defective gene. It's a dominant gene, so it can. There's obviously age-related glaucoma that can come on when you're older, or if you have a hit on the head. There's about 3 or 4 different ways you can get glaucoma. But if you're born with it, you've obviously got a defective gene. That's a dominant gene, and you can pass it on to your own children. You may not, but in my case, that's what happened to me. My mother was vision impaired or blind because of the glaucoma that came. We don't know much about it. It came from my grandfather, actually. So I'm the third generation of this. I had two other aunties with it, and one of them has also a child with, now an adult, of course, with glaucoma. So it's definitely in the family. One of the other things I'm very big on is that if you can get the opportunity to learn Braille, especially when you're young, do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so many children in the U.S. don't do Braille now, and this is going to end up causing a lot of problems. So definitely learn Braille. Yeah.
Kylie and I call it the sight first policy. We don't like it. You've got a little bit of vision, use it. Oh, look, I was talking to a lady the other day who was taught Braille originally, then they dragged her into sighted writing, and as an adult she's been a Braille transcriber. Another friend of mine, they tried her in Sydney, they tried her on low vision stuff first, and while they can hold an iPhone up to their face and see a picture, and has actually done some remarkable work with some AI-generated social media content in the last fortnight, their sight's not really good enough to read, and it hurts their eyes to keep looking, so you might have the eye fatigue.
And that's why it's not appropriate, for that very reason.
Correct, and she's a very good Braille.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're blind, and she's a very good Braille transcriber and an excellent musician, and classically trained opera singer, so she needs to know the Braille music code. And this whole rotten sight first policy really gives me the irrits, because it got us when I was younger. That my mum wanted me to learn Braille, the establishment wouldn't do it.
Precisely my life story, by the way. Precisely the same. Very similar thing that happened in the States. Yes, very similar.
So, my friend's parents were obviously, when they tried to get her into sighted writing, obviously were able to strong enough to say, hang on, this isn't going to work. And now she's a very good Braille and value. We were only just talking about it yesterday, how Braille is so important to her, particularly when reading. She loves her audio books, of course, but, if she's trying to do something like she's doing a second degree, and loves to have the access to Braille when she's reading stuff for research purposes, for the work she's got to do. She's a proofreader, and it's so important, Braille, and I'm so glad that she had access to it. I'm so glad that my other friend I talked to on Saturday also had access to it, the one they tried to drag out of Braille and into sighted writing. Because it affects the language centres of the brain.
That never works. That never works. No matter how much the establishment wants that to work, it never works. It won't work. For the pure reason that there's nothing wrong with being blind. It's simply an inconvenience. But for the other reason is in the States, they don't really want to invest the money in educating. But see, the problem is that, like I said a few moments ago, with the lack of volunteerism, when people are not educated, they're less motivated to work, and they're less motivated to be active in their community. So there's certainly an argument and correlation can be made here to you having the willingness to help these people in IT, and to them being able to be simply more active citizens and being more readily available to participate. There's certainly a huge correlation. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, somebody had a saying recently, Braille readers are achievers, or some rhyme like that. Most people, Braille readers do have a substantially better chance of getting a job out of the blindness community. It seems to be some of the statistics I've seen. But that said, however, I was getting back to forcing kids to read when they clearly can't, through their eyes. At our support skills program, we have a psychologist, and he does the social skills with the kids. Teaches them not to rock backwards and forwards, and talks to them about their personal problems.
It's so good that they have that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, look, Jeff's great. But I often find myself in conversations with him about, our kids by about 2:00 in the afternoon at school are knackered. absolutely knackered, because they are so tired and so run down because they have had to work so hard to read stuff and to write stuff.
Yeah.
While they're craning over their laptops when they haven't embraced things like screen magnification or speech or braille. Their posture is ruined because they can't type properly. And keyboarding is such an essential skill for people like us to have, because that's how we drive our screen readers.
And how you write
notwithstanding,
stuff. And how you
write stuff and manage without a mouse.
Well, I mean, there's always some trackpad with Apple Compute, so you do use a mouse when you're blind, yeah, certainly, but less. And
you can, but
in a
it's
different
good
way.
to know the keyboard shortcuts for things.
Yeah, well, that's basically what iMacs use, keyboard. It's more keyboard than click, at least in my estimation. That's really good that they have people in your community that teach the blind children the social skills.
Yes, indeed.
That's super important, because in the States we don't really have that. And then these blind people, some of them have appropriate skills and others not. And the people that don't have the social skills can't work either. So it really does impact employment and economics, and it really impacts things now. But then the problem will be then, as I get older, there will be more and more people that will need care and won't be, contributing. So there's a whole, economic landslide of effect here, and you doing the right thing is the right thing. But also there's a serious problem, in the fact that all these blind children are not getting the full education and, and needing,
I always say to the blind children and even the adults, I say, look, you're here to learn the schoolwork, not fight with your technology.
Sure, absolutely.
So here's an easy, and even Jeff said to me once, he sat in on one of my lessons, he goes, gosh, Elise, he said, you're always looking for the easy way out. I said,
well, of course.
Yeah, because why not? Why do we have to make a task harder than it need be? It's already hard enough being vision impaired or blind. Why do we need to make it harder?
That's precisely what I think, to a greater extent of the imagination. And then I would also say, well, it's also good to know different problem solving things,
Excuse my chimes.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful
Westminster Chimes app.
Oh, that's from outside.
Been going for about an hour and a half, I think.
Indeed, yeah.
Yes.
Indeed, yeah. It's been absolute. It's been an absolute honor to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You really did great. As I knew you would. You really rose to the occasion. Hey, you got up in the morning. You came and talked to me. Came and spoke to Aaron's opinion. And really, this is for the future. Everybody will hear this and learn a lot from you. So do you have So Toastmaster, do you have any parting words, any final great statements that you want to make sure you say before we wrap up the episode?
Well, employment's always a big thing for people in our community.
Absolutely.
Access to the written word, or access through technology that gives us access to the written word. I think the thing is, follow your dreams. Don't let the dream takers get in your way. If you want to do something, go and do it. Do what you do and love what you do.
I think that's a beautiful way to end. Absolutely. If someone's listening to this from up over or anywhere else in the universe, hey, how can they get in touch with this Elise Lonsdale guy?
Yes, or girl. You send an email. Firstly, you can use the form on my website, which is at dataaustralasia.com.au, and I'll spell that. DATAAUSTRALASIA.com.au. That's dataaustralasia.com.au. DATAAUSTRALASIA.com.au. Or you can send an email to Elise at dataaustralasia.com.au. That's ELISE at DATAAUSTRALASIA.com.au. You can look for me on Facebook. Just look up Elise Lonsdale. I think in Melbourne there might be another one in the UK someplace. There is a Data Australasia Facebook page that gets looked at, and there's also LinkedIn, and you can call me on +61 448 966 533. That is +61, which is the international dialing code for Australia, +61 448 966 533.
Well, very good to have you, Elise. You're definitely going to be a great member of the Aaron's Opinion family, and we couldn't do it without you. So thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us. And absolutely, thanks so much, everybody. If you can just hold on for another 30 seconds, by the way. But anyway, outside of that, thanks so much, everybody. Whether you're listening to us from Australia or anywhere else around the universe, keep podcasting and keep speaking and keep doing great speeches, everybody. And until next time, absolutely help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.